Chapter 201, Hiruzen's Arrangements. In the Hokage office, Hiruzen, Danzo, Koharu, and Homura sat. Everyone had a serious look on their face. They had been up all night ensuring that the village stays calm. Homura said with a sigh, "Itachi stopped the coup. What are you planning to announce to the village, Hiruzen?" Koharu said, "We will also have to build a new police force. And we have to come up with a reasonable explanation to give to the clan leaders and the council." Hiruzen replied, "I have thought about it. But first." He looked at Danzo and said, "I hadn't issued the mission to attack it. So effectively right now, the route will be disbanded. The route ninjas will be placed under my command in the Umbu." This news surprised Koharu and Homura. They looked at Danzo. They wanted to oppose but realized why Hiruzen took this step. After all, Danzo had overstepped his boundaries too much. However, they didn't want the route to be dissolved. Both looked into each other's eyes, tactically agreeing to ask Hiruzen to cut Danzo some slack. However, their short gaze didn't escape Hiruzen's eyes. Danzo began arguing, "Hiruzen." However, Hiruzen cut him off right away and firmly said, "No more discussion. My decision is final. You still remember who the Hokage is, right?" As he spoke, his chakra began exerting pressure on the entire room. Danzo, Homura, and Koharu immediately felt an intense pressure bearing down on their old bodies. Breathing became tougher for them as they looked at Hiruzen. The Umbu who were on guard outside the room also felt an intense chakra. They looked towards the room with sweat gathering behind their masks. They didn't know what was happening in the room, but their minds, which were in chaos due to the unimaginable massacre the night before, calmed down. All had the same thought: as long as we have Lord Hokage, we have no reason to worry. In the room, the elders analyzed whether they should resist Hiruzen's chakra. After all, Hiruzen hadn't displayed his full power. If they decided to, they could counter the current pressure. However, Homura and Koharu decided against it. If they did, Hiruzen would just overpower them. Homura and Koharu were reminded of the massive difference between their strength and authority when compared to Hiruzen. Homura said, "All right." Koharu also nodded. Hiruzen stopped exerting his chakra. The pressure in the room was slowly lifted. Hiruzen said, "Uchiha Sasuke has woken up." He talked about his interaction with Itachi. Itachi claimed that he did this to test his power. "We will report that to the village and the council. Though some clan leaders will realize that something is off and might even figure out the truth, I doubt they would speak of it." Everyone in the room understood that Hiruzen was speaking of Shikaku. He continued, "As for the police force, establishing a new one will require a lot of work and manpower. Also, the common people were upset at how the Uchiha policed them. So I have decided to abolish it too. Instead, the Umbu will take up that responsibility." Koharu said, "Even with the route, the Umbu won't have a lot of manpower. Are you planning to expand the Umbu?" Hiruzen nodded. "In a month and a half after the flames of this event settle down, I'll recruit more Jounins into the Umbu. The Uchiha clan had the highest number of Jounins and elite Jounins. We will have to invest a lot of resources into the existing Jounins and raise them to the Jounin rank as soon as we can. Even if we don't promote them officially, we have to ensure that they have Jounin level fighting capabilities." Homura asked, "What about the other villages? Though preventing the coup has conserved our strength, other villages may have some evil ideas as we have lost the Uchiha clan." Hiruzen replied, "Suna is still weak and Kiri is involved in their internal battles. They aren't in a position to do anything. The only concerns are Iwa and Kumo. But, they are wary of each other. So they won't make a movie. Danzo interrupted him, I disagree. Kumo must have already begun making plans to take advantage of us. Have you forgotten what they did after Orochimaru left? Let me keep the control en route and I will ensure that they can never start anything. Hiruzen shook his head and said, even if they do, they will only probe us. As long as we respond according to what they do, we should be fine. Besides, instead of getting greedy for our lands, they would be more concerned about a rogue S-rank ninja who could massacre the entire Uchiha clan. By the time anyone is ready to make a move, we would already have defenses in place to deter them. The group discussed and debated a lot of other issues before they began talking about the remaining Uchiha children. Hiruzen said, Itaki requested that they would be looked after properly and be integrated properly into the village so that this event never has to be repeated. He also hoped that the surviving Uchihas would be well trained. Koharu said, well, we first have to move them out of the Uchiha compound. Letting them live there will just bring back the nightmares. Homura nodded and said, we will also have to ensure their safety. Otherwise another incident like the Hyuga one could happen. Hiruzen nodded and said, I thought about this issue. I have decided to have 4 Umbu squads keep a watch on them at all times. The elders were surprised. Koharu said, 4? 16 Umbu ninjas for just 35 children? That's a huge waste of our manpower, Hiruzen. Hiruzen replied, it is. But it's the least we can do for Itaki after what he has sacrificed for the village. Koharu immediately stopped speaking. Compared to what Itaki had done, 4 Umbu squads were really not worth mentioning. Hiruzen continued, I will move them to their old clan compounds so that they won't be on the outskirts of the village and have an easier time navigating to the academy. In addition, I will employ some civilians permanently to look after them until they graduate. I'll also hire some retired ninjas to train them properly. Considering the trauma that they went through, it is likely that most of them will awaken the Sharingan. So with proper training, in 2 decades, at least half of them will become Jounins. The elders were satisfied by Hiruzen's arrangements. They ended the meeting and got to work. In Fujin's house, Teru asked, do you two want to continue as a team? Hoka and Fujin were silent. After some time, Hoka said, no. Miko completed our team with her skills with fire release and genjutsu. We could find someone who is good at fire jutsus, but finding someone who is also good at genjutsu will be very difficult. Fujin nodded in agreement. Hoka sighed and continued, not to mention, we will miss her if we stay in the same team. It could affect our concentration on the mission and be bad for us. Teru said, yeah, I had the same worry. He looked at Hoka and Fujin and said, I was a bit skeptical of the team when you approached me, Fujin. But I joined as it seemed like a fun idea. I am glad that I agreed that day. It's unfortunate that it ended this way. Who would have imagined something like this would happen? Fujin and Hoka sighed and nodded, yeah. The 3 said goodbyes. All 3 were sad. Fujin sighed, no point in being dejected and wasting time. After all, it was my decision to not interfere. It's time to get back to training. And time to take the next step. He entered his basement to continue his training. In the afternoon, Hiruzen made an announcement. The entire blame was put on Itaka's head. His image was painted as a bloodthirsty lunatic. Following the announcement, they participated in the council meeting. 3 days after the massacre, a funeral was held for the deceased Uchiha clan members. All the Uchiha orphans had woken up and were present. All of them were crying. The entire place was filled with their cries. And with all the Uchihas dead, they didn't have any relatives to comfort them. A lot of other ninjas also showed up. Fujin, Hoka, Teru, and Renjiro were also present. So were all the academy teachers. Renjiro looked very sad. Fujin observed the Uchiha orphans. Unsurprisingly, other than Sasuke, he didn't recognize anyone. After the ceremony and mourning, everyone began leaving. Only a few stayed back. Renjiro, Fujin, and Hoka stood in silence in front of Miko's grave, paying their last respect to her. After some time, Renjiro broke the silence. Fujin and Hoka could feel the sadness in his voice. He said, "I never spoke about this with you. Before you, I had trained another group of academy students." Fujin and Hoka listened to his words carefully. Chapter 202, Renjiro's Past and Hoka's Conviction. Renjiro continued, "They weren't as talented as you three. But they were very cheerful and worked hard. After 2 years of training under me, they were all promoted to Chunins. I was very proud and fond of them. Unfortunately, at the start of the Third Great Ninja War, the army they were a part of was ambushed by an elite army of Kyomagakure led by the current Raikage and the Jinchuriki of Eight-Tailed Beast. The entire army was annihilated with no survivors. We never even got their dead bodies back." He stayed silent for some time. Fujin and Hoka didn't disturb him. He continued, "In the war, I was deployed on the coastline the entire time. So I never had any opportunity to seek justice for them. Even if I did, I doubt I'd be able to take revenge on a future Kage and a perfect Jinchuriki. The sorrow made me determined to never take another squad of fresh Genins as students. Until Lord Hokage forced me to train you guys. Seeing your talent, I was convinced that as long as you three grew up safely, there won't be many who could kill you. At worst, you will always be able to abandon the mission and escape." He stopped talking for a minute before sighing, "However, I never imagined that my student would die in the village rather than on the battlefield." He placed his hands on Fujin's and Hoka's heads and said gently, "Ensure that you two stay safe and alive. Don't make me attend the funerals of all the students I trained." Fujin and Hoka said, "Yes, sensei." Renjiro had a sad smile on his face. He left, leaving Fujin and Hoka alone. Both stood in front of Miko's grave silently for some time. After a few minutes, Hoka asked, "Do you have any plans, Fujin?" Fujin shook his head and said, "No. I just plan to focus a lot on training. The next time something like this happens, I hope to have the power to make a difference." Hoka heard him. He didn't understand how Fujin could have made a difference in this matter. But he understood why Fujin wanted to become stronger. He said, "Let's both train Fujin. I want to hunt down Uchiha Itachi." His words shocked Fujin, who immediately looked at him. Though he was very serious a moment ago, he couldn't help but think, "Shit, Renjiro will lose another student." He eliminated that thought from his head and said, "He slaughtered his entire clan. I went on a mission with Miko earlier and saw how strong the Jounins in their clan were. I doubt we both together could beat one. And yet Itachi, who is only 1 year older than us, killed the entire clan." Hoka frowned. He thought and said, "He let the power go into his head. As long as he doesn't keep getting stronger and we keep training, we will eventually catch up with him. Then we can make a move." Once again, Hoka surprised Fujin. This time it was the conviction with which he spoke. Fujin looked into his eyes and stared at him. However, Hoka's gaze didn't falter. Fujin smiled and said, "Yeah, eventually we will be stronger. He raised his fist and said, 3 years. Hoka was confused. Fujin continued, I will gain the Jounin rank officially in 3 years and challenge Sensei to a fight. I know you have never managed to beat me. If you want to hunt Itaka, beat me when we meet after 3 years. This time Hoka was surprised by Fujin's confidence. Hoka smiled and bumped Fujin's fist. Both left in different directions. Fujin smiled thinking, if he stays true to the decision he made today, Hoka will get strong. Very strong. I wonder what an S-rank Hyuga would be like. But regardless, chasing after Itaka is suicide. Not to mention his own prowess, there will also be Kisame or Jozo with him. And with Zetsu monitoring everything, Obito too could get involved. So it's best that I don't let Hoka seek a pointless death. After all, Miko is already dead and it isn't really Itaka's fault. If anyone has to be blamed, then it would be Obito, the village elders and the Uchiha clan higher UPS. Fujin walked to his home. His little chat with Hoka motivated him to increase his training intensity significantly. He entered the basement and decided, my body is sufficiently trained to resist and endure electric shocks. It's time to train lightning transformation jutsu. Fujin clenched his fists. Immediately lightning covered his entire body. The long time that he had spent training his body with the burst jutsu helped him to generate lightning and flow it through his body without making any hand signs. Fujin took a step forward. In a blink of an eye, he reached the walls of the basement. He immediately focused chakra on his feet and exerted force on the ground to stop himself from crashing into the wall. When he stopped, the wall was only an inch from his nose. He thought, shit. If I wasn't already used to traveling at high speeds, this would have ended badly. This jutsu's speed is good but it doesn't provide any control. No wonder the scroll said that the only way to move freely with this is to use obstacles like trees or rocks to change direction. And though the speed this jutsu provides is high, it isn't as fast as flickering when it comes to traveling and also takes a lot more chakra than it. However, on the plus side, in a battlefield that doesn't have a lot of space, this jutsu will be quite strong. Especially if the fight is inside a cave or if the battle situation doesn't allow me to move away long distances using flicker. Having analyzed the advantages and disadvantages of the jutsu, Fujin began training it. 6 hours later, Fujin was standing with his back to the wall. He observed all the pillars in the basement. In addition to the pillars, there were 6 mannequins in the basement. Lightning began flowing through Fujin's body. He bent at his knees slightly and disappeared from his spot. In the basement, lightning could be seen bouncing between pillars. Fujin suddenly appeared before one of the pillars. His left fist was clenched. Chakra had been concentrated on the fist. Fujin punched the mannequin. The force of Fujin's punch caused the mannequin to explode. Chunks of metal got launched across the room and crashed into the pillars and the wall. Due to the seals Fujin had inscribed on the pillars and walls, the metal pieces bounced back without damaging them. A smile could be seen on Fujin's face. He analyzed, Senjutei Jutsu style along with this jutsu is a very powerful combination. I doubt many would survive this unharmed. However, his smile faded as he concluded, unfortunately, this is the limit of this jutsu. No matter how much I try, I can't keep this jutsu on continuously. After I attack once, all the lightning flowing in my body disappears. I tried generating more lightning, but even that didn't work. It looks like this is the limitation of lightning transformation jutsu. Sigh. I thought I could match Raikage's speed aspect with this jutsu. Though it's understandable as it is only a rank D jutsu. So either Hiruzen or whoever tried to copy the Raikage only reached this level of efficiency, or they are hiding what they achieved and only put a subpar version in the academy. Fujin stopped practicing and went to the meditation room. He sat in meditation to analyze whether he could modify the jutsu to ensure that it stays on for a long time as long as he continues pouring in chakra. After an hour, Fujin let out a sigh. He concluded, no. The limitation is due to the way the chakra is manipulated. If I have to go past it, I'll have to change the way chakra flows. Unfortunately, I have no experience in this. I am not sure if I could do something like this even with wind jutsus. Even if I start experimenting, I'll probably need years of experimentation until I get lucky and find the right way. It's not worth it. I will just have to stick with this until I find a more advanced version or become an expert in lightning element to create my own jutsus. Fujin decided to rest for the day. The next day, Fujin began training the electric skin jutsu. Fujin weaved the hand signs. An electric layer formed along his skin. Fujin observed, it doesn't boost me physically like the lightning transformation jutsu. But if anyone hits me, then the attacker will get zapped just like in the burst and lightning transformation jutsu. Alright, let's see how this works. He began making hand signs. Lightning release, lightning beam jutsu. A beam of lightning was released from Fujin's hands. It hit a mannequin head-on and destroyed it. Fujin analyzed, looks like the power of my jutsu has increased by almost 50%. I guess the Jashinist priest that Miko and I fought used this to increase the power of his lightning jutsu before he went on a rampage during the final clash. If I can use this without any hand signs every time before I use a lightning jutsu, it could be considered as me permanently boosting the power of my lightning jutsus. Yeah, I should do that. While I am training, I'll use this jutsu every time before using a lightning jutsu. Over time, I will be able to do this instinctively and without wasting any time. Chapter 203, Telescope Technique vs Seals. Fujin was happy with the progress he was making. He decided, I should take a few months off and learn all the jutsus that I decided to learn. After all, I completed a lot of missions in the last month. Combined with my team disbanding, it shouldn't raise any eyebrows. Having made a decision, Fujin began making hand signs. Lightning release, false darkness jutsu. He stretched his arms forward. Lightning was launched from his palms. Fujin aimed it at a mannequin. However, right before the jutsu hit it, Fujin changed its direction. It barely missed the mannequin. Fujin analyzed, this jutsu's power output is much weaker than lightning beam. But, with training, I'll be able to maneuver this jutsu more freely. So in a usual battle, false darkness will be much more effective. Lightning beam, on the other hand, will be more effective when used on a stationary object, an immobilized enemy, or when I want to use it to confront an enemy's jutsu head-on. Fujin continued training false darkness jutsu until he ran out of chakra. For the next 2 days, he trained the jutsu until he could perform it seamlessly. Fujin weaved the same hand signs and performed the jutsu. He aimed the lightning at a mannequin. Right before he hit it, he changed its direction to another mannequin. He repeated it once again and changed its direction to third mannequin and scored a direct hit. Fujin smiled while breathing heavily. He concluded, shit, it isn't easy to train 2 rank B jutsus at the same time. It puts a lot of strain on my chakra reserves. Lightning jutsus use a lot more chakra than wind jutsus. Still, it looks like this jutsu is down. Though I haven't reduced the hand signs required, it's fine. Reducing or even eliminating hand signs will require months of training. I can do that slowly over a few years. Anyways, it's time to practice the next jutsu. Fujin weaved hand signs. Lightning appeared on his body. After a second, the lightning changed its shape. It began taking the shape of needles. However, suddenly they collapse. The lightning on his body dispersed as well. Fujin frowned. This jutsu is tough. He kept trying. On his 14th try, he finally managed to make the lightning on his body change shape to needles. His body had dozens of lightning needles pointing away from him. He made another hand sign. Immediately, all the lightning needles were launched. They traveled around 5 meters before dispersing into the air. Fujin sighed, this jutsu is tough. Though I guess the difficulty makes sense. After all, it isn't simple like just generating and launching lightning. The scroll said that hundreds or even thousands of small needles can be formed. And they can be launched for around 40 meters around a user. In addition, the user can also control the part of the body on which the needles are formed. This way, the user can avoid hitting allies. Fujin kept training the electric needle spread jutsu. 5 days later, Hiruzen was sitting at his desk going through the paperwork. The Uchiha massacre had increased his workload numerous times. He had to check files on every dead Uchiha ninja, classify them as dead and analyze any impact their death might have. He had been working on it for over a week. With a sigh, he closed one file and handed it to his assistant. His assistant handed him the next file. The file was titled, Uchiha Miko. Hiruzen opened and read all her data. He analyzed, she didn't have much contact outside her clan. Just her genin squad. Renjiro should be fine. He is used to dealing with such events. He looked at his assistant and asked, Takao, have Hoka or Fujin taken any missions after the incident? Takao grabbed some files and began checking. Hiruzen looked at Miko's file again and wondered, why did Fujin leave Tomatsu's squad and form one with his teammates and classmates? Hiruzen said, also check on Tomatsu's file and see what he is doing. Takao said, yes Hokage-sama. While Takao was taking a look at the files, Hiruzen decided, I wonder how that greedy kid is doing. Hoka has his parents to look after him. So he should be fine. But Fujin is an orphan. I don't think he understands how to deal with the loss. Hiruzen looked into the crystal ball on his table and channeled his chakra into it. Soon, a picture appeared on the crystal ball. It was Fujin's house. A peculiar expression appeared on Hiruzen's face as he thought, I heard Takao say that Fujin's house was too extravagant. I now see why he said so. Even my house isn't as big as his. He focused on the crystal ball to peer into Fujin's house. However, Hiruzen was surprised, my telescope jutsu can't look into his house? Did he hire a seal master to inscribe anti-spy seals? No, I have specifically instructed every seal master to not inscribe seals that stop my jutsu. Only a few with authority like the clan leaders or strong ninjas can go around it and get those seals on their houses. So how did Fujin manage to convince a seal master to inscribe such the seal on his house? Hiruzen was intrigued. A smile formed on his face. Fujin's shamelessness and his talent in wind nature manipulation had already impressed Hiruzen. So did Fujin's performance against Kaminari. He didn't expect Fujin to surprise him once again so soon. He concentrated on the crystal ball. Soon, the seals that were inscribed on his house began appearing in the crystal ball. Every seal was glowing lightly in different colors. The walls of Fujin's house began fading in darkness, only leaving the seals visible in the crystal ball. Hiruzen had a smile on his face at the start. However, soon his smile faded away. Half a minute later, shock could be seen on his face. Takao found the information and approached Hiruzen. He said, "Hokage-sama." However, he stopped talking when he noticed the shock on Hiruzen's face. The Uchiha massacre had put him on edge. Seeing Hiruzen shocked worried him. He quickly asked, "Did something happen, Hokage-sama?" Hiruzen snapped out of it and shook his head. He said, "No, everything is all right. Report what you found." Takao didn't understand why Hiruzen said no. But it wasn't his job to inquire about that. He began reporting, "Fujin and Hoka haven't taken any mission post the incident. They had created a team with Uchiha Miko and Senjutaro. Senjutaro has returned to his old team. So I believe their team has disbanded. I have some additional information regarding Fujin. Apparently, there is a record of him using training ground 23 every day when he wasn't out of the village on mission. But for the last 10 days, he hasn't used the training ground." Hiruzen narrowed his eyes on hearing that. He thought, I guess losing his team member did hit him hard. Unfortunately, this is a part of being a ninja. It'll be a shame if he loses his interest in being a ninja due to this. Takao continued, "As for Tomatsu, their last mission was tougher than the estimated rank B. One of their team members got injured. They seem to have taken a break after that mission." Hiruzen said, "All right. Send a messenger to Tomatsu. Ask him to visit me at the earliest." Takao replied, "I will get it done, Hokage-sama." He left the room. Hiruzen turned his attention to the crystal ball. He thought, which crazy person inscribed over 2,500 seals on his house? It's as if every seal in the library under rank A is inscribed on his house. No wonder I couldn't peer into it. Should I ask Fujin about it? He thought for a bit and concluded, no. He may get offended or on guard if he learns that I was trying to spy on him. Worse, he might accuse me of violating his right to privacy and ask for some compensation from me. I'll ask Renjiro when he gets back from the mission." Later that day, Fujin was visited by Tomatsu. Fujin was surprised. He stopped his training and greeted him. Tomatsu entered his house and said, "Hey, how have you been, Fujin?" Fujin replied, "I am all right, Tomatsu." "How is Katsumi?" Tomatsu said, "He has recovered well. We are planning to start taking missions again. I came here to see whether you are interested in returning to the team." Fujin was surprised. He thought, it hasn't been 3 months since we took a break. Did Hiruzen ask every team that is available to take missions? He looked at Tomatsu and said, "I would love to, but I have been on missions continuously for the last month and a half. So I am planning to take a few months off. I'll rejoin the team when I am ready." Tomatsu watched Fujin carefully as he spoke. He got a bit worried as he recalled his conversation with Hiruzen. Hiruzen was worried that Fujin was depressed and hence wanted Tomatsu to take him along with him on missions to distract him and revive his interest in training. Tomatsu said, "Fujin, I am aware that you might be hurt due to losing a teammate. However, the best way to deal with situations like this is by interacting with others. If you stay alone and keep thinking about it, you'll be more depressed." Fujin was confused. He thought, what the hell? He is worried about me? If so, why did he take 10 days to visit me? No, I don't think I ever told him that I formed a team with Miko and others. Tomatsu continued, come with us for this mission. If you still think that you need rest, you can take it after this mission. Fujin thought for a bit. But he couldn't find a reasonable excuse to say no. He agreed. Tomatsu smiled and said, good. Come to the mission center tomorrow morning. Fujin nodded. Tomatsu took his leave. Chapter 204, A Chakra Metal Mine. Fujin looked at Tomatsu's back as he analyzed, this definitely doesn't sound like Tomatsu. Someone must have given him the information and asked to make me go on a mission. But who? Fujin thought for a bit and concluded, it's either Renjiro or Hiruzen. Most likely the latter. Oh well. This team doesn't do missions continuously. I should still have plenty of time to train. And I can always ask for breaks when I need more time to train. Anyways, I have to give credit to Hiruzen. From the way Tomatsu spoke, it looks like he thought that I didn't train. So Hiruzen probably knows that I didn't visit the training ground recently. He probably thought that I had stopped training. Though I am a bit talented, I doubt he has the time to keep tabs on me considering the amount of work this massacre should have put on him. So it's safe to assume that he is looking for everyone who is affected and checking on everyone. Still, this should be a lesson for me. While the decision to only train lightning jutsus wasn't bad, deciding against training in the open raised some suspicion. Had I continued with my morning exercises, Hiruzen might not have paid any attention to me and left me alone. I'll have to keep this in mind when I take any action in the future. Concluding his thoughts, Fujin returned to the basement. He made hand signs. Lightning release, electric needle spread jutsu. Lightning appeared on his skin and immediately transformed into small needles. There were around 125 lightning needles on Fujin's body. He made another hand sign. The needles were immediately launched outwards for 20 meters. Fujin nodded, this is much better than when I started. Though the number of needles can get higher, I don't have much use for them. What I need more is to increase the distance to which these needles go. And, I also have to work on generating needles on only one part of my body. Otherwise, the chakra cost of this jutsu will be needlessly high. The next day, Fujin showed up outside the mission center. Tomatsu, Katsumi, Ryota, Tadashi, and his dog Kenta were already there. Tomatsu went in to accept the mission while others decided to catch up. Most of the conversation was centered around Katsumi recovering from the injuries. Tomatsu returned and said, I accepted a mission in the land of hot water. A noble has made some discoveries in the territory under his command. He wants us to provide protection and help with the inspection. There will likely not be any fighting, but he issued the mission as a precaution. We may have to stay there for a few weeks. Tadashi said, a relaxed mission to get us started. Nice pick, Tomatsu. Tomatsu nodded as he thought, yeah. If Fujin is distracted, then his life would be at risk if we take a difficult mission. The squad moved out and began rushing towards the hidden hot springs village. After a day and a half's travel, the squad finally reached and entered the village. As they were walking, Fujin couldn't help but notice the ridiculous number of hot spring baths in the village. Ryota noticed Fujin's gaze and chuckled. He asked, first time here? I too was surprised by the high number of hot springs in this village on my first visit. The village truly lives up to its name, haha. Fujin replied, I entered this country multiple times, but this is my first visit to this village. I did expect a high number of hot springs, but this is a bit too much. How do these shops even stay in business if so many exist? Wouldn't they keep undercutting each other's prices? Tomatsu answered, the daimyo has issued a minimum price for using the hot spring baths. Every bathhouse has to abide by it. This way they don't go into a loss. Fujin muttered, it's still too much. After all, if customers don't visit them, they will still have losses. Tomatsu nodded, yeah, many bathhouses do shut down. That said, most of the bathhouses are sponsored by rich nobles who want to have the entire bathhouse to themselves when they come here for vacation. This is why you see so many of them. Fujin thought for a bit and said, that makes more sense. However, he couldn't help but think, a certain pervert must be visiting this village all the time. As they were talking, they reached a mansion. Tomatsu interacted with the guard and introduced himself. Soon, the Konoha ninjas were guided inside. They were led to a room where only a middle-aged man was sitting. The man saw them and quickly greeted them, welcome to the hidden hot springs village, friends from Konoha. Have a seat. I am Matsushita Yuzuki. I issued the mission. Tomatsu nodded and sat opposite him. Yuzuki looked at his servants who brought them here. The servants bowed and left them alone. When the doors were shut, Tomatsu asked, so, what is our mission? The mission statement wasn't very clear. Yuzuki said, that is because I wanted to keep this mission as secretive as I could. Tomatsu became a bit serious on hearing that. The other Konoha ninjas were intrigued as well. Yuzuki picked a map and laid it on the table in front of him. It was a map of the land of hot water. There was a small piece of land marked on the map. Yuzuki said, this province is under my command. It is around 150 kilometers to the east of this village. One of my workers, who were farming, came across something interesting. I hired an expert to check and I think that we have discovered a mine. Tomatsu was very alert. This matter seemed very serious. He asked, what sort of mine is it? Yuzuki answered, we will need to conduct a detailed exploration to be sure. Our preliminary exploration indicated that this mine includes rare and precious metals. Tomatsu calmed down. He thought, though precious metal mines can earn a lot of money, they won't attract too much attention. However, Yuzuki said, and I suspect that the mine might have some chakra metal reserves as well. His words shocked everyone in the room. Chakra metal was extremely precious in this world. Tomatsu muttered with a grim face, why didn't you issue an S-rank mission? Yuzuki said, I am not sure that it is indeed the case. We may have just gotten lucky during the preliminary exploration. So I don't want to attract a lot of attention. I have talked with our daimyo. If this mine does have chakra metal reserves, then we will give Konoha the mining rights. We will also give Konoha the first preference while selling it. So your mission consists of two parts. Firstly, I want your team to ensure that no bandits interfere with the mining process and that no information is leaked out. We haven't allowed the information to leak out, so unless we are very unlucky, rogue ninjas won't interfere with the process. As for the second part, I also want you to contact the Hokage secretly and ask him to send out more squads here as soon as we confirm that the mine has chakra metal reserves. Tomatsu analyzed the situation. This mission can be very risky. If the details get leaked, then we may invite a lot of trouble. But, if the mission is successful, the village will have huge profits. It would help out the village a lot. Especially after such a disastrous loss, this news can improve our morale. Tomatsu made a decision and said, all right, we will take the mission. I'll send a message to Hokage-sama. But have your exploration team work very rapidly. Yuzuki nodded, yes, I'll have them work as fast as they can. They began discussing the specifics of the mission, the explorers, and other factors. After the discussion was completed, Yuzuki smiled, and said, "You must be tired from a long trip. I'll arrange dinner for you. You can rest here for the night and go for the mission tomorrow." Tomatsu smiled and said, "Thank you." They got up and left. After having dinner, the Konoha ninjas gathered in a room. Tomatsu said, "Ryota, write an encoded message to Hokage-sama. I'll send it to him. Write everything that was discussed with Yuzuki." Ryota said, "On it." He began writing on a scroll. Tomatsu said, "I wanted to take an easier mission to end our break, but this one can go bad. Unfortunately, saying no isn't an option, as this can help our village a lot. We will stay on our guard the entire time while protecting that area. However, if we spot enemy ninjas, be it rogue or of any other village, in numbers that we can't take on coming towards the mine, we will escape. Is that understood?" Everyone nodded. Tomatsu said, "Good. Take a good rest tonight. We will have to be on full alert from tomorrow onwards." Everyone went to their beds to get a nap. Tomatsu stayed with Ryota until he was done. He borrowed a messenger hawk from Yuzuki and sent the message to Hiruzen. The next morning, the Konoha group set off. Chapter 205, A Deadly Trap. Fujin and his team were running towards Yuzuki's province. Since it was to the east of the hidden hot springs village, it was close to the border of the Land of Frost where their squad had done their previous mission. After a couple of hours of running, they reached close to Yuzuki's province. Since they were close, Tomatsu began instructing his squad. Yuzuki's exploration team has already established a base. We will meet up with them and decide on a plan to continue. Katsumi, you will set up a perimeter around the entire area with your bugs. I want to know about everyone who enters and leaves the area. It will be tough, but I want you to maintain it all the time." Katsumi replied, "All right. I'll get it done." Tomatsu looked at Tadashi and said, "You and Kenta will keep patrolling the area. Remember every worker's scent when we reach there. If later on you smell any new scents, alert me immediately." Tadashi replied with a grin, "Don't worry, we got it." "Right, Kenta." Kenta barked in agreement. Tomatsu nodded and said, "Ryota, Fujin and I will stay on standby. If you two find something off, then you will pass on the message to us and tell us what you think will be the appropriate action to take." Everyone nodded. Tomatsu was about to say more when all the Konoha ninjas suddenly stopped and jumped backwards. They landed on a branch and saw dozens of kunaus raining down in front of them. All five frowned. In the next second, 20 silhouettes appeared from behind the trees. The Konoha ninjas were surrounded. As they saw their headbands, everyone's faces grew grim. Fujin muttered, "I couldn't sense them until now. They are all at Chunin and Jounin levels." Tadashi said softly, "They have disguised their scent to smell similar to the trees." Fujin said, "At least 30 more ninjas are forming a second perimeter. And a few more are probably still hiding." Everyone's faces grew grim. One of the ninjas who were surrounding them spoke in a teasing tone, "I wonder why Konoha ninjas are rushing so hurriedly towards the Land of Frost." Tomatsu said, "We have a mission in this country. Why have you Kyomagakure ninjas encircling us?" The Kyomagakure ninjas said, "If your mission is to explore that Chukra metal mine, then I have unfortunate news for you. Kyomagakure has decided to take control over the mine." His words angered everyone except Fujin. Fujin's mind was busy calculating whether they could avoid a confrontation or at least ensure a safe escape. However, he noticed the other 19 Kyomo ninjas getting ready to attack. He could feel bloodlust from some of them. The more he calculated, the more he realized how dire the situation was. In the end, he just had one thought: shit. Tomatsu quickly analyzed the situation. He didn't want to give up the mission, but success against such huge numbers was impossible. He said, "All right. We'll withdraw." However, the Kyumo ninjas didn't move. The guy speaking had an evil smirk on his face as he said, "If we let you go, Konoha will send a larger squad to confront us. Unfortunately, you have to die." He immediately jumped forward to attack. The other 19 Kyumo ninjas also attacked. In addition, a few Kyumo ninjas kept hiding in the forest and observed the fight. Tomatsu shouted, "Stay together. Protect each other and focus on retreating." He knew that their chances of survival weren't great. He wanted to use teamwork to break through and run away. The Kyumo ninjas all attacked Konoha ninjas with shurikens. They had launched so many shurikens that dodging them all would be impossible. Ryota shouted, "Careful, those shurikens are charged with lightning." The Kyumo ninjas smirked on hearing that. Despite knowing, the Konoha ninjas wouldn't be able to dodge due to the high number of shurikens. As long as the shurikens hit them or even their weapons, their body will be paralyzed for a few seconds. Even if they barely manage to avoid the shurikens, their bodies will still feel the electric charge and slow them down momentarily. This would be enough time for Kyumo ninjas to win the battle. Chakra gathered on Fujin's palm. He said, "Ignore them, focus on making a breakthrough." His team decided to trust him and began moving back in the direction of the hidden hot springs village. The chakra on Fujin's hands transformed into the wind. A gentle breeze began flowing through the area. All the shurikens were redirected by the wind and stayed away from them. They passed the Konoha ninjas from a safe distance and instead moved towards the Kyumo ninjas. The smirk on Kyumo ninjas' faces suddenly disappeared. All took evasive maneuvers. A few grabbed swords and flowed lightning chakra through them and used them to block or deflect the shurikens. Taking advantage of the small opening, Tomatsu instructed, "Tadashi, create an opening. Ryota and I will assist you. Katsumi and Fujin, focus on defense." Tadashi and Kenta stepped forward. Man-Beast Ultimate Taijutsu, Fang over Fang. Both began spinning around rapidly and doubled up on one of the Kyumo ninjas. Ryota and Tomatsu followed him. Their goal was to stop the ninjas next to the one Tadashi targeted from interfering. As long as Tadashi injured that ninja, the Konoha ninjas could get out of the encirclement. Fujin grabbed a sword in his right hand while thousands of bugs began appearing around Katsumi. With Tadashi leading the attack and others aiding him and protecting each other, the Konoha ninjas finally felt some chances of success. However, as Tadashi reached close to that ninja, he suddenly grinned. He made a hand sign while saying, "You couldn't have chosen a worse opponent to break through." Lightning release, gyroscope jutsu. His chakras suddenly spiked and 2 rings of lightning appeared around him and began spinning around him at very high speeds. Fujin's eyes widened as he sensed the immensely destructive power in those lightning rings. His chakras suddenly increased a lot. He had suppressed his chakra earlier to pretend to be a Chunin. But, he is a full-fledged Jounin. Unfortunately, he didn't have any time to warn. Tadashi and Kenta directly hit the lightning rings. The jutsu was so powerful that their attack was immediately stopped. Both screamed in pain as their bodies were zapped by lightning. Ryota and Tomatsu were shocked. They began moving towards Tadashi. However, they were blocked by the Kyumo ninjas they were trying to block earlier. 2 Kyumo ninjas attacked each of them and stalled them successfully. Fujin and Katsumi wanted to help, however, they were helpless. 4 Kumo ninjas weaved hand signs at the same time. Tadashi and Kenta were hit by the lightning rings. Lightning release, false darkness jutsu. 4 lightning spears were headed at them from the back. Fujin immediately shot air bullets at 3 of the incoming attacks. The air bullets pierced through the lightning spears and dispersed the jutsu. Katsumi controlled his bugs to stop the last attack. The lightning directly hit those bugs. Hundreds of bugs died, but they managed to stop the jutsu. However, despite stopping the jutsus, their situation grew grimmer. While Tadashi and Kenta were being zapped and others were stalled, 2 Kumo ninjas flickered next to Tadashi and Kenta. Fujin and Katsumi turned around to continue their escape. However, they were shocked. 1 Kumo ninja stabbed his sword through Kenta's neck in front of them. Tadashi watched in horror as Kenta whimpered and howled in pain and collapsed on the sword. After a moment of disbelief, his eyes turned red in rage. He looked at the Kumo ninja in front of him and shouted, "Motherfucker! I will kill you all." His body was still being zapped. However, he gritted his teeth and moved despite the pain. He formed a claw with his right hand. His nails grew long and became very sharp. His hand transformed and looked very muscular and savage. He attacked the ninja who had formed the lightning rings that trapped him and Kenta with his claw, aiming to crush his skull. Unfortunately, he was highly outmatched and his body was still slow due to the shocks he had to endure. The Kumo ninja moved to the side and dodged his attack with ease. He grabbed his sword and pierced Tadashi's heart in one smooth motion. Tadashi's eyes were wide open. He couldn't believe how easily he and his partner were killed. The Konoha ninjas wanted to help. However, they were all tied down. They didn't have any opportunity to save Tadashi. They could only watch helplessly as a teammate died in front of them.